Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 155. Pardon me if I, excuse me. Okay, there it was. I just ate, because I was like, I should probably eat something before I record. But every time I do that, it always comes up. And I think it is just the fact that I'm talking and, all those muscles around, like, my diaphragm and my stomach and all that, my lungs are all moving around, and something about it just makes the gases come up. So we're gonna have to deal with that. You're gonna have to deal with that, okay? I've recently been making a pilgrimage back to Final Fantasy XIV, as inspired by a couple people I know, either jumping back into it or starting it for the first time. And I was like, I really like 14. Man, every time I think about that game, I'm like, this game rules. And the only reason I stopped playing it was because that's just kind of the guy that I am. I'm just kind of like that. I am not great at building habits, even in time-wasting ways, I can't even get addicted to an MMO. I'm like, wait, I gotta play something else now. Whatever my interest is like a weather vane. It just blows in whatever direction it the weather demands. But I was like, I would really like to actually go through Heaven's Word and stuff. See, the thing that kind of dropped my interest off at the with 14. All right, so people talk about weird history of the game, right? So technically, when you start 14, you are technically starting 2.0 of the game today. That is because the original version of the game, quite famously, was so bad, it literally got nuked in real life and in lore. There was like a huge apocalypse event, and they said, fuck it, we're starting over. And so when you start A Realm Reborn, that's why it's called that. It's because it's like the original vanilla 1.0 of the game is like a canon part that got of the world of the history that got completely obliterated. And you were like immediately made aware of that, and it's like a constant factor of the fucking giant cataclysm that happened a little while back. Like, not even, I don't even think that, I think like 7 years before the game started, like the whole world essentially got reset. And everyone like remembers that. Everyone remembers it, like they were alive and there. So it's like, I don't know, it's a very interesting part of the game's setting to me. What was I talking? Anyway, so A Realm Reborn is frequently, people really oversell how bad it is. And I think it's to the game's detriment, honestly. It reminds me a lot of Phantom Blood, Part 1 of JoJo, where a lot of people go, just skip Phantom Blood. Just skip it. You know what? Watch a few episodes. If you don't, just skip it. Just skip it. If you don't like it, just skip it. Just skip straight to Part 2. And it's like, oh, dude, okay, first of all, Phantom Blood is like 9 episodes. The first 3 episodes are great, and the last 2 or 3 are really good too. There's like a couple in the middle that I think are at worst a little slow. If you could enjoy Phantom Blood, if you just fucking viscerally hate Phantom Blood so much that you can't get through it and you have to skip through like 3 episodes, oh my god, God forbid an hour and a half of wacky fun adventures. God forbid I have to sit through that. Not even. It's 24-minute episodes. Less than 2 hours. Like that doesn't bode well for like the rest of your enjoyment of the fucking anime, dude. I might be a little biased in saying this because I like Phantom Blood. I like Part 1, and I like The Realm Reborn. Maybe that has to do with the fact that I don't have any existing, like, I hadn't really touched an MMO for serious in a while, like years and years. Honestly, I never really was serious in an MMO before. And when I say serious, I mean like actually dedicated to like learning it and like what's going on in this game and not just playing like Wizard 101 and just wandering around and and doing random stuff, right? As a kid. And I remember I was like, wow, I was very impressed. Like 14 is Realm Reborn is a lot more solid than people give it credit for. I think at worst, so there's two things going on here. It's actually a very funny problem because it's the exact same problem that Part 1 has in JoJo, which is people compare the start of the thing to like where it ends up going. And like, yeah, of course, in a lot of cases, of course, yeah, it's might not be near, oh my god, it gets so much better later on. But you go back, I had that experience. I was recently when we went back through parts 2 and 3. And I was really dreading parts of Stardust Crusaders, and I ended up coming out with a more appreciation for it, a newfound appreciation for it. Like, actually, you know what? This isn't that bad. This is pretty fun, actually. A Realm Reborn is a lot like that, I think. Is the content, like, a little basic? Yeah. But if you don't have if you don't have a ton of expectations from playing like other MMOs and you like the game definitely does things in its own way, right? It has its own way of doing things, like the way the content is unlocked, the sheer amount of story that is in the game, that is like required just to progress at all in it. If it's, I find that like people who have bad experiences with it are just people who like don't jive with the game in general. And like if you just completely hate the core experience of the game, that's just sort of what Realm Reborn is. And then everything after that is from what I can tell and what I'm experiencing, just adding additional stuff around that, right? More content and jobs and stuff like that. So I will go on record as a Realm Reborn defender. It's really not that bad. I had a good time with it. I also didn't like just straight like mainline the main story. I actually did take my time, which I would recommend. Like taking time, go do side stuff, check out some other jobs, once you're like a little established. Once you feel like you're relatively high level enough. Level cap in Realm Reborn is 50, so like that's what you're leveling to. Once you feel like you're good, go check out some other jobs, or once you finish the main story for the 2.0 content. And then I remember just checking out fishing and going, man, the fishing in this game is really cool. Oh man, the crafting in this game is really cool. It's like an actual it's not just like click the button, craft the thing. There's an actual like mini game with mechanics and different skills that you unlock, and there's like a legitimate skill to crafting things efficiently. Like you can fuck it up and stuff. And there's all this content related to I've spent so much time in the Golden Saucer. I love the Golden Saucer. I love doing the Golden Saucer. I love gambling, fake money. I love doing scratch tickets. I love doing the chocobo races. I love unlock. I was super, so like my main job is my ninja. And I basically was like, I'm going to deck out my ninja. Once I got like the end level gear, I was like, I'm going to do the glamours. Glamours are like the basically like the it sucks. There's not like a common universal name for this. It's also sometimes called transmog. It's basically it's that whole system of like maybe sometimes vanity gear or whatever. It's basically like what you can have a set of gear that is purely visual on your character, and then a separate one that you're actually like equipped with that affects your stats. So that's what glamour is the visual set that you have. And all I did was I just got all of the, I saved up enough of like the Gold Saucer tokens, your Chuck E. Cheese tokens, and I bought the whole gambler set of gear, which is just Setzer's outfit from FF6, because he's my favorite Final Fantasy character, and then I dyed it in a cool like dark green color because I like green. and I'm like, this is it. I'm like the coolest. I'm the coolest looking character ever. So Jesus, I was like going towards the thing. I just got sidetracked talking about stuff. I always get sidetracked playing 14. Like I went on like a big minion hunting thing. Minions are like little pet buddies you can have alongside you. I was like, hang on. I think I'm going to spend 2 hours getting a bunch of minions and like checking them off a list. So the thing is, 2.0, Realm Reborn, main story, all good, you know? It definitely picks up near the end. A lot of it is just setting up concepts. You know, it's an introduction to the world and the characters and the main concepts and conflicts and all that. A lot of introductory stuff. And then you hit what is called the patch content. So 14 works on this schedule where they release an expansion, right? And that is like a new like X.0 version, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, so on. And then in between the expansions, like every 3 months or so, they add a patch. They introduce a new patch, you know, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, so on and so forth. And then that is basically the additional content that basically like ties up loose ends from the story of the main 0.0 version. That version, that's like a complete story from beginning to end. And the patch content afterwards like wraps up some storylines and slowly introduces you to what is going on in the next expansion. So that's like the flow that they've gotten into. 2.0 did it a little differently. So they had the whole storyline from beginning to end, and then you hit that and you do like the final raid series and all that. You see credits, it's all cool. And then you go into the patch content. And 2.0's patch content, I'm not going to lie, is definitely a low point. There are interesting things in there, but there is way too much. It's like 5 or 6 or 7. It is so much. It is so many. There's so many. Like patch. It goes up to like how much? Like FF14 2. God, does it go up to 5? I think it goes up to 5. Followed by okay. It's a lot. It's like significantly longer, and not all of it is terribly interesting. It's a bit of a drag, and near the end I was like, ooh. There's some good stuff in there. There's like an interesting little twist. There's like an interesting storyline with like this sort of refugee crisis. And there is one dungeon, or sorry, I should say specifically like trial, which are sort of like instanced raids, but they're just versus like a boss with like a party. There is one trial that I'm not going to say which one it is, but it's like the one, and it's like that one with that music, and that was really good. That's like a classic. That's like probably the way people talk about that moment, a lot of people still consider that like a top moment of all time in the game, of like that one boss. You know the one I'm talking about. Like that's really good. That's hype. That's hype as hell. But yeah, the patch content in general kind of slowed down my enjoyment of that game. It really did. It was like, oh, okay, there's a lot to go through. But I finally did it a while ago, actually. I finally actually completed it and could move on to Heavensward. You know what's so funny? 14, it's almost like a meme how much story that game has. When you finally finish 2.5, like the whole Realm Reborn, you finally finish it, you go up to like an NPC to turn in the final quest to complete it. And it's like right before some kind of event, and you click on them and it says, you get a pop-up that says, I'm not kidding you, it gives you a warning. It says like, when you click proceed, several cutscenes will play in sequence. You should we recommend that you set aside time to watch all of them to completion. I was like, oh, okay. And then you click the button and you watch an episode of a TV show, essentially, in-game cutscenes. It's a good episode of a TV show, but man, you are sitting there and you're watching basically a machinima with text boxes. So I finally broke free into Heaven's Word. And there's a couple other jobs that I wanted to try that you unlock. Every time they add new jobs in an expansion, you have to actually get to that expansion. You have to get to that content, that part in the main quest before you get access to them. So I was really curious about Dark Knight and Astrologian. And I realized I was going through the main quest, and it's just a very basic, like, here's some quests to introduce you to the new zones of this expansion, right? There's a couple big zones. And you're going to do some quests around there to get introduced to the major storylines and the characters and the conflicts and all that. And I noticed, I was like, wait, hang on. I spent so much time dicking around before I actually decided to, like, sit down and grind out the rest of A Realm Reborn that I'm, like, way over leveled on my ninja for this. I usually, what I've always done is just play through on, like, my main DPS class, which is ninja, and then I do the side stuff on my other jobs, right? But I was at, like, level 50. I'm at, like, level 57 on my ninja, and I'm doing, like, level 50 quests. And I'm like, I feel like I feel like I could do this a little more efficiently. So you know what I'll do? I'll level up my Dark Knight, and I'll do the rest of the expansion on my Dark Knight. That'll be cool. So I went in, and your Dark Knight starts out at, like, level 30. So I gotta get that motherfucker all the way up to 50. And let me tell you, not doing main quest stuff, right? If you're, like, leveling a side job, man, before level 50, FF14 is a podcast game. And then after that, it completely flips. It is not. I cannot listen to anything in the background because I am so consistently watching cutscenes and reading dialogue that, like, no, I actually have to, like, focus. And, like, I want to focus on what's going on. But before that, I'm just doing leveling roulettes, baby. You can do whatever's, like, the main, like, around your level range. Whatever raids there are or, like, dungeons you can queue up for, just do, like, 2 of them and you'll get, like, a level. If you have, like, the food experience buff on you. It's great. I was just chilling, doing tank stuff, just running dungeons and listening to stuff in the background. It was awesome. Very chill experience. I think one of the reasons people are able to get so addicted to MMOs is because if you've got like a good one with a lot of variety of content like 14 does, you can just, like, you don't have to play other games. You can it's like you can get, like, a nice story experience, like a single player JRPG. You can just get, like, a chill background podcast game. You can get all sorts of, like, social stuff. There's plenty of, like, little side content to do of various different types. It is really, besides the PvP, which is infamously underdeveloped because Square Enix won't give them money because they have to dump cash into fucking foam stars. That's really funny, I was gonna say, basically the game is really good. The developers are really good at catering to many different kinds of players. Like, people who just want the story, you can just experience the story. If you literally just want to play it like a JRPG, you can have now I think, like, most, if not all, of the main story can be played without even having to do multiplayer content. You can just have bots. You can have like AI companions for those sections, like mandatory story dungeons and stuff like that. And now, so yeah, now you can just skip that or avoid that aspect of it. If you want like hard gameplay content, there's like a bunch of different high level raids that you can do. If you want to be like a real sweaty MMO guy, tons of like casual content and side stuff and non-combat focused things, right? Like the crafting and gathering and the mini games and oh my god, I love playing Triple Triad in this game. I love Triple Triad. I just went around and I was collecting as many cards as I could, just trying to get as many drops from like every single Triple Triad NPC. That's like the card game that they've got. The one thing about the game that is notoriously lacking is the PvP. And it's really funny because I mentioned how, Square Enix won't give them money. And that's like not even a joke. That's actually true. 14 is like the most profitable thing I think they've like ever made. It might actually be the most profitable thing they've ever made. And every single year, or every like once in a while, Yoshi P, the producer of the game, like lead producer guy, who communicates very often and very frequently and openly with the player base, says something to the effect of, yeah, we'd really like to devote more devs to like actually completely reworking the PvP and making it like good. We just don't have the resources. We just don't have the resources to focus, to expand in that direction. And you're like, what? How? And then you look at the Square Enix balance sheet and they're like, $20 billion on Foam Stars, a game no one played. A game not a single soul played. We gotta make another big life service game. Like, I don't know why they sound like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Shaggy Enix. Yeah, how was that? It's like, are you serious, guys? Really? Yeah, but 14's great. I can finally I ended off last night. I finished the actual full, like, Dark Knight storyline. Man, it's really good in that the first storyline that they've got in Heavensward. That's a cool storyline. I liked where that went a lot. You can feel the production value of the game rising the later you get into it, which is really funny. Because they made 2.0. They made Realm Reborn on like a shoestring budget. That was like survivalist game development. Game has 14 has an incredible story. I would recommend that I'm not going to retell it, but I would recommend you go look it up. The story of that game's development. It's like a miracle that it's so good. But yeah, it's really fun. I love being in the world. I love the music and the visuals, and I like the characters a lot. And it's just fun. It's just a really good game, and it has the most absurdly, I have to reiterate this every single time. Everyone talks about it every time, but man, that is the most absurdly good value for a free trial. Completely unlimited access to the base game and the first 2 expansions, which is like a fuck ton of content. It is so much goddamn game. And like, if you're into it, wow, okay, like I could play this game for a while before I would even bump up against the point where like, maybe I should actually buy a subscription and stuff like that. The only limits are on like chat features. Like you can't chat unless you're in a party, in which case you can. But that it's like that, and you can't do like item trading stuff, which is like seems normal. It's just stuff to avoid botting essentially. Yeah, like I can't believe that game. That game is like a modern miracle. Anyway, you want to hear about another game that could maybe also be what's the opposite of a miracle? A tragedy? An incredible tragedy. I don't know if we don't have to go that far. On my notes, it just says Multiversus Eulogy. I didn't talk about Multiverses when it relaunched. I was going to, and then I forgot about it because it didn't leave enough of a memory in my brain to go, oh yeah, I should talk about Multiverses on the podcast. So, I'm sorry if I offend my girlfriend who loves, well, see, the problem is even Kat got frustrated with that game. That game is like tailor-made for her. You're telling me a game has Bugs Bunny and Harley Quinn in it? What? This is so awesome. But even she was like, I feel like the whole relaunch of that game has been a bit of a, I'll call it a debacle. We'll say debacle. For her, the biggest problem was like they made a completely unnecessary engine upgrade to Unreal 5. I don't know why they did that. The original was fine. I don't know what the purpose of Unreal 5 was for. Maybe there was some good reason, but not enough to justify it, I think, to most players. Because what it resulted in is, wow, this took a really long ass time to come out because they basically remade the game they'd already spent like 2 years making. Right? Like, okay. And it's just now more demand. There is no real, maybe if I looked at old footage, I would be able to see how much, it's so much better now, but from a casual perspective, there's no appreciable difference between the original version of the game, the beta, I guess it is, what it was the whole time, and the relaunch, the actual release. So she had to stop playing it because it literally just like couldn't run in a stable state on her laptop. It just couldn't. It was just too demanding, which is great for a game that's meant to be like a casual free-to-play thing. That your game is like too demanding to run for people with lower end specs. Awesome. I was never entirely sold on Multiverses. I played the original beta when it came out, and I played a little bit of it with her online, and it didn't really like captivate me. I'm not a huge platform fighter guy in the first place. But yeah, I don't know. It didn't really grab me in like a gameplay or a presentation way. I was also just very kind of turned off by it on a conceptual level. I think my first reaction to hearing about it was the word consumerism. And it reminded me of like a Funko Pop store. And it just kind of felt weird and icky, you know? Warner Brothers is like, they really want you to know how much shit they own. They want you to know how much stuff they own. They smashed all that into Ready Player One. They smashed all that into Space Jam 2. It's just, look at all this stuff we own. Isn't that crazy? Don't you guys like the Warner Brothers brand? Don't you like it as much as Disney? Without realizing that like all the stuff they own is way too disparate and random for people to have like a connection to the whole of. Like when people grow up on Disney, it's like everyone watches the same movies. No one says like, oh yeah, I grew up on Warner Brothers. When they say that, they mean like Looney Tunes or something like that. They don't mean like a Clockwork Orange, you know, just some random stuff, some random film that they own. No one says that. Stop trying to act like you have this mass cultural presence. Did you know Warner Brothers has more debt than Disney has money? That's frightening. That's frightening that it's even possible. Having a little bit of debt is actually really good for you. Having a little bit of debt is really, really good. Oh yeah, multiverses, right. I remember finding the original game, like, thinking it felt a little weird, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. And then I played the re-release, this version, the real version of the game, I guess. And thinking it was even weirder. I think I said something along the lines of, what is it? There is no polite way for me to describe the physics of this game. It was so strange feeling that I had to go to training mode and like really pay close attention to it. Like, I would just jump. I'm like, why? Okay, what is weird about this? So there's all these weird things about the physics that makes the game feel kind of bad. So number one, as I learned later, this isn't really a physics thing, but it factors in. The game has like a fucking 30 frame input buffer, which means that you can make an input and then 30 seconds later it'll come out, which is like super weird feeling. It is very weird feeling, and it has to be shorter than that, right? It has to be shorter than that because inputs like slop over each other, especially in like the heat of a game. So you end up with these weird situations where you're like, wait, did I do that? What? Okay, second of all, jumping and aerial stuff is really whack feeling. So here's the thing. Here's what I discovered. Jumping has this weird momentum to it. It has this weird acceleration where you press the jump button and there's like a second where it's almost like your character is trying to like unglue their feet from the floor. And they're like trying to get off the ground, like to get exit velocity. And then they jump up and they shoot up really fast. And then they stop. It's like they hit a ceiling. It's you can't see me. I'm like raising my hand and lowering it really fast. It's super weird feeling. Like I'm on the ground and then I'm in the air. For the second thing, every time, here's what's so weird. I don't know whose decision this was, but every time you do an aerial attack, it like cuts your momentum to like 20%. It's super weird. Like you do an maybe it was to make it easier to combo or something like that, but every time you do an aerial, your momentum just drops. You just slow down. And it makes the game feel like, people mention the game feels a lot slower. And I think that's like one of these little details. Like every time, because it's a platform fighter, right? Platforming, you're jumping a lot. The game is meant to be like a lot of the game, like 60% of the game at least, is going on in the air. And aerial combat doesn't feel good. Like there's like a flow that happens, right? When you understand the game's physics and how you I don't know, like when you play Smash Brothers, maybe, everyone compares this game to Smash for obvious reasons. But like really, like take a look at the physics in that game. Like things just kind of feel right. And one thing that I never thought I would have to say that I have to give Smash credit for, because it seems so basic, is, yeah, like most moves retain your momentum in the air. So it feels like you can actually, like, when you do like a short hop in Smash, you don't have to be some pro to do like a short hop neutral air for like forward, forward moving hop and do like your neutral air or forward or something like that. And your momentum stays like carries out, like you're actually able to fling yourself at your opponent, and that's like fun. Like that feels good. doing that and trying to do that in this game is like, I'm jumping and now I'm on the ground. And weird. No land canceling, which makes a lot of things also, like aerials feel like, especially doing aerials low to the ground, feels super, super strange. Because you'll still be doing the aerial while you're like touching the ground and your character's just sort of like sliding there. You're just sort of hovering there. Really weird. Let's see. What else does it have going against it? The monetization is like somewhat nauseating. I was like, okay, well, that's what kind of game it is, I guess. They monetized the fuck out of this thing, dude. The fuck out of it. I wasn't a big fan of the, what do they call them? Dimensions or realms or something like that. It's like the main single player content. You've got a little map of different points, and each point is like a battle or something like that. And the game, you just kind of like do battles and then go to the next one, and then you play a very boring mini game sometimes. And it was just like, ooh, I just wasn't feeling it. I was just not feeling it. It didn't have something. I don't know what it lacked, but just something about the gameplay did not excite me. I didn't even really want to go online because of that. So I stayed like purely, so I really didn't feel like dealing with online play. I also don't like the idea of playing a fighting game and having to rely on another person on my team. One day I'm going to make a video on Dissidia, and there's going to be a section devoted to how awful an online team-based fighting game it is as an idea. When I get to talking about Dissidia NT. One day I'm going to make that video. Yeah, what's funny about it is that it's a game that, I don't know, it felt like it really tried to force excitement, like force interest. Like, oh, look at how much stuff we own, oh, look at all these characters, and look at that, look at this. And there were people who were genuinely excited for it, Katrina. But most of the discussion that I saw online of the game was not people going, yeah, that game looks really cool. Or even, oh, it looks really bad. It was just people going, do you think it'll be successful? do you think it'll be good? Like, I don't know. This is not even good, just successful because of the whole free to play thing. It's most of the discussion that I read was like, people are, do you think it's going to be like a good business model or something? People were not going, oh, I really want to play that character. Oh, I can't wait to play this character. Can't wait to play with my friends. No one was doing that. And I don't know if that was a failure of the marketing or the concept or what. There's a really interesting phenomenon that's happened more and more, I think, as in recent years. Which is that it's, I guess, I don't know what you'd call it, like the crossover, the crossover apocalypse that's been upon us for a while. Crossovers used to be really cool, and they still can be cool, you know? They still can be cool. And I think it's neat that more creators and companies are open to doing stuff like that. You can get some neat stuff out of it. But like, it's a lot. Obviously, you know, making a new thing with new characters is risky, right? It's a risk because it's unproven. And you know what? So obviously, you know, it feels self-explanatory, but obviously making a game or a thing or something that has a bunch of different characters that you already know is, like, on paper, in a spreadsheet sense, more effective means of advertising, because you can just you can just bank off of brand recognition, existing brand recognition, and you don't have to take the risk of making something new. And you know what that's made me really appreciate I never thought I would say this, but it kind of makes me appreciate MiHoYo. Mihoi Nihoi. It kind of makes me appreciate what they do. And I have to say, it is impressive. It is impressive that they have managed to build a massive international gaming empire spanning multiple different series, multiple different genres and platforms. And they've done it all like for years at this point. Like there are Hoyoverse super fans, right? And they're like multiple sequels. They make like sequels to fucking gacha games that you can't even play anymore. Like, and people are along for it. And they've done all of it entirely with original characters. Have they done crossovers? They might have done a couple like random collab crossovers, but for like 95% of it, as far as I can tell, all of that is just with their own original characters. It's with like all the Genshins and the Honkai, the Honkers, and the Zenless Zone Zero game literally just came out, and they make characters that, well, a lot of people find appealing. I am not a big fan of a lot of their character designs that are in their games. Something about it just doesn't quite appeal to me. I don't know if it's the art style or something. I find most Genshin characters to be like a bunch of random details and clothing articles kind of just slapped together, and I don't get any real vibe off of them or like personality. So it didn't work on me. But a lot of people, I guess, just really like these characters, or they find that shit really interesting, and that's like the hook for them. And like, you know, making something with characters that people find interesting and want to learn more about and that they want to like play as or see is like, the characters are like the biggest hook. You have to have some kind of engaging, cool, interesting characters. There are games that I have picked up entirely because I thought there was a cool looking character. There is literally one specific character. So I played like Ozerlane. It's some like titty gacha game. I played that game for like 3 years, like 3.5 years. I played that like throughout like a bunch of high school. Like as soon as it launched globally, because I saw fan art of Admiral Graf Spee, who's like it's like a World War II battleships, but they're anime girls kind of game. Wow, that feels horrible to say out loud. That feels awful. I feel like I'm at Thanksgiving. I just said something horrible and the family's looking at me. And I saw this character and I thought that she looked so cool and cute. And I was like, I want to play this game. And then I played it for like 3 years, pretty hardcore, like every day. And I got her, and I got like a cool, like cute skin that she has where she's in like a little comfy sweater. And I was like, this is awesome. This is so good. That happens. That works on people. Works on me. I'm not going to lie. Good characters are good characters. Good in the sense that they look cool. That they're appealing. So I have to hand it to MiHoYo. They have succeeded where perhaps the Warner Brothers conglomerate has not. There's a... Do I have anything else to say about multiverses? Oh, the reason I was even thinking about it was because there was a Riot... Excuse me. There was a Riot platform fighter called... It was like codenamed Pool Party. It never got like an official name or anything. It was codenamed Pool Party. And it got canceled. Apparently, this like news just came out, like behind the scenes stuff. Apparently, part of the reasoning for the cancellation was because the higher ups at Riot saw the lukewarm response to multiverses and said, pull the plug on it. Which honestly, like, I'm surprised it was even. It was because I'm surprised it was even like considered. From what it seems to me is that, bleh, how do I formulate my thoughts? How do I make sentences? So I was gonna say it's weird to do that when you have 2XKO. Seems like those kind of like clash. Seems like those two. You have like a 2D tag fighter and then a platform fighter. Like, are you gonna do both? Like, something about that just feels kind of weird. Even though they are different enough and have different audiences, but it makes a lot of sense to me when you consider the idea that maybe both of these projects were started at around the same time, and they just kind of wanted to see which one worked out. And it turns out that 2XKO, the Project L team, has made way more progress. Apparently, this platform fighter idea just had a bunch of had a very tumultuous development, and they couldn't really agree on a vision for the game or anything. So maybe the writing was on the wall, and when Multiversus came out and tried to do the free-to-play platform fighter thing with recognizable characters, and it has sort of failed to catch on as big as they hoped, the Riot peoples said, pull the plug. Can I say, I am like a little... Okay, the Braum trailer for 2XKO tempered this a little bit, but I am fucking sick of hearing about this game. I'm going to be honest. I was intrigued. I was interested for like the first 2 years. Do you know how fucking long it's been? It has been it's been like 5 years since this thing was announced. And at this point, well, okay, so it was announced like forever ago, and then it got like the trailer, and that's when I was, okay, that's when we can actually be interested in it because we have something to go off of. Like, okay, it's a tag fighter. That's when we found all that out. And I was interested for like a year, 2 years maybe. I forget exactly when all that stuff came out. But I had a point where I was like, how fucking long are you just going to show me a video of you going, we're going to have a beta test with 4 characters? I'm like, can you just, like, just shut up? Please just go away and come back when you have a real game for me. There's something like, and that's like mean, you know, that's unreasonable. But do you understand my frustration of like, hey, look, I don't know. It feels like we're just dicking around. It feels like hey, like, what if this game existed? What if it was real? Like, it feels like a really elaborate prank at this point. I would rather, like, there's a certain annoyance level that comes in for me. I can't think of any other examples because this is a very exceptional example. This is a very exceptional thing that a game has had this weird of a pre-release cycle. I don't know what you'd want to call it. If they just did like a yearly update, I'd be fine. But just, I don't know, just hearing, which I guess that was what they were doing for the longest time. I don't know. None of these are emotions. They're irrational. There was just a part of me that was going like, guys, can you just fucking like not talk to me until you're done with it? Like, I don't want to hear it. I'm not interested. You're making me annoyed now. They showed off the Braum trailer, and I was like, okay, I like Braum. Braum's a fun character. He looks cool. The game looks a lot better, just visually, and just you can tell there's a lot of polish going on. I'm very curious how many characters it's going to launch with, because if it's like next year, you know, it said 2025. I'm pretty sure. If it's actually launching next year, I'd be like, okay. There's like less than 10 characters in your tag fighter. You would probably need like 20 minimum for like a 2v2 game to get like a satisfying amount of team variety and all that. Is there just going to be like a bit? I wouldn't mind if there was just a big explosion of content. I wouldn't mind. It's just like this weird, like, minuscule drip feed that was like getting on my nerves. I would rather just like hey, here's a game with like 8 characters. Here's an open like beta, or here's a demo. Let's not do the beta shit. Just call it a demo. Here's a demo. Check it out. That's what I would prefer. I prefer like let me put something in my hands. If you're gonna go this long, right? If you're gonna have something to show off, I would kind of prefer if I could actually play it and I could check it out and see where it's going and get a little excited for it, because I don't know. I've the hype has not really. I don't know. Like, are they gonna? I don't know how like they're gonna get people excited around launch, because I feel like the whole game. I know it's not, right? I know there's a million things that are probably still in development, but I feel like the game's just been like fucking slit open and just exposed. Its internal organs have been exposed for like 2 years, and they're getting like smelly. What a weird image. I want to talk a little bit speaking about fighting games, which I always am apparently. I put a little bit of time into Vampire Savior. Not really online, just kind of going through arcade mode and stuff. Vampire Savior, if you don't know, is Darkstalkers 3. Darkstalkers has a fucked up, weird naming history. I don't want to get into it, but Darkstalkers 3, which, was it released in America? Was it released outside of Japan? I'm actually not sure. Darkstalkers 3, also known as Vampire Savior, because in Japan it's called Vampire. Just Vampire. Called Vampire Savior. That's the third game. It's the Darkstalkers that people will actually play, like, for real. The other ones are kind of neat, but VSAV that's like, if you're gonna be it's like that's the one you're gonna be playing. I wish there was actually that's the one everyone wants. Is everyone wishes that there was a version of the game that actually had all of the characters and the good version of the system mechanics that are in VSAV, but they make, when it comes down to it, the community picked a game that plays better than one that had other characters in it. If you don't know what I'm talking, man, there's videos on like how fucked up the development of all the Darkstalkers games was, and like all the weird, awful, dumb changes that they made. Anyway, so I've always wanted, okay, everyone loves Darkstalkers, right? I say loves with like an asterisk, because no one actually plays it. But everyone loves like the characters, because they've got like, because all the characters are women, right? There's no male characters in Darkstalkers. It's all just big booby women. And the girl who's in Marvel vs. Capcom with the green hair, Everyone likes Darkstalkers because they like the characters and the style and the animations, and all that stuff is great. And I've always had an appreciation for that. It's some of the most insane. Like, I remember reading like this. It was like an intro to the 12 rules of animation entirely using Darkstalkers, just sprite animations, and it's like, damn, they were going insane. They had like top talent on this stuff in the 90s. But I've always had a problem actually getting into the game and like playing it. Here's how I've described it before to people, which is Darkstalkers feels like, specifically VSAV, feels like the slipperiness of Third Strike, but way too fast. If that makes sense. Like, Third Strike has this, I call it slippery factor to the way that it feels, because moves are generally really fast, like just in their total duration. Like, they just have kind of a quick motion to them. They, the hit stun in that game is generally kind of like low. So you're like hitting someone and you're just kind of like going in and out, and the hit, like there's the pushback on moves, you just kind of get pushed out of stuff. Moves are really fast. They don't lock your opponent in place for that long. The hit stop isn't very intense either. And It's also like not like a super big combo game for a lot of characters. Like a lot of characters just kind of do like, you'll do like you're just getting like individual hits with pokes, or you're getting a throw, or you're doing a target combo or something. It's this sort of, it's a little slippery feeling, but it's a slow enough and methodical enough game that it's definitely an acquired taste. And it's really fun once you get into it, but it's an acquired taste. And for me, Darkstalkers always felt like that, but like way too fast. Like way too frenetic, and I felt like I could never get a handle on the game and like actually control a character properly. And I was telling that to someone, and I think part of it is my expectation. I have a certain taste. I like games, and I learned fighting games with games where you combo a couple normals together into a special move, right? And that's like basically how you do your combos, and maybe you get like an extension after that or something, or you get these big like multi-stage combos and all that. And Darkstalkers really doesn't work like that. Vampire Savior is a lot more like you just sort of like jump at them, and there's a lot of poking, and you're getting a lot of like individual hits. And then once you are able to confirm something, you're just sort of like doing a chain. You're just sort of like doing a chain combo into like a knockdown or something like that. And a couple characters are confirming into specials, but it's like, for the most part, is you're just fucking gorilla flinging your ass at somebody and just hitting buttons. And it is like insanely frenetic. It is so goddamn fast. And once I actually... Okay, it's not a great training mode game. You can sort of tell because, I mean, it was made before training modes were really a thing. And it's a game that you really... I'm used to a game that I can sit down in training mode and like check out a character and like, okay, I'm going to learn like a little combo, and I like sitting in training mode and just experimenting with a character, right? I'm not like a super lab monster, but I will just sit down and like what can I get off this? And let me try that. And I like to go through a character's whole move list and see what's possible with them that I can figure out on my own, and then look stuff up. And Darkstalkers just it's not conducive to that. It's a game where you got to get your ass in and you got to actually play it. And once I actually got into it and I found a character that I liked, man, that game is really fun. It is very fun. And part of that is kind of the simplicity. Darkstalkers is interesting because it's this sort of middle ground where it's kind of crazy to think they went straight from like Street Fighter 2. Hang on, what was the order? Did Alpha come out before Capcom fighting game? Let me just say history. Come out before or after Alpha? Street Fighter Alpha. Let's go all the way back. Actually, hang on. 1994. Okay. When did Alpha come out? Nope, they were still releasing. That was when Super Turbo came out. Wow. Okay. And they did Children of the Atom. Darkstalkers is a really experimental series for Capcom in the 90s. So they did the original Darkstalkers in 94. They did the next game the next year. And then so on and so forth. And Vampire Savior came out like... What was that? Yeah, 97. Okay. So first of all, I want to say that might have been the first game. I guess Children of the Atom came out, but that was when they were like, okay, we're gonna try this new thing with like chain combos where you can go from light to heavy. You go from light to heavy, and it'll just automatically, the attacks will chain into each other. But if you do a chain, you can't do a special cancel, right? Like, oh, we still got a limit on that. There's a bunch of weird super inputs, like god, like woo, like Akuma's raging demon, light punch forward, light kick, heavy punch. Imagine that, but like every character has some variation of something like that. Like it's really weird. Just these crazy button combinations that feel super arbitrary, but they were figuring out what should a super motion be, what should it entail, what should it feel like. I'm not a big fan of it, but it is kind of interesting. And just all the gameplay concepts that they came up with, like, is Lord Raptor like the first air dashing character in a fighting game? Like, he might be, and that kind of stuff is cool. But it's also the kind of this middle ground where they don't, like, you look at something like a lot of the Versus games, like the Hyper Fighters as they called them. And those games are like, I think like the structure that I'm usually used to in the way that they play of like do a bunch of normals into like a special and then like you get like a launcher and then you jump up and you do an air combo and something like that. Darkstalkers is like it's more grounded. It's maybe like 50-50. You jump a lot, but you get a lot of hits on the ground. Like if you get a hit in the air, it doesn't really lead to much. It's this weird kind of like, it's not like a super hyper fighter, but it's not completely grounded. And it is genuinely like pretty interesting to actually sit down and play. And it is fun. Like it's a fun game. So that's the plus. Here's the negative. The negative is I found out I really like Anakaris. Anakaris, or however you pronounce his name. I'm going to go look up right now how you pronounce his name. Anakaris. How is it spelled? Anakaris. Anakaris. So Anakaris, I've always thought was like the coolest Darkstalkers character. He's the big like pharaoh mummy guy. I always thought he had the sickest animations. I love the mummy theme, It's crazy how like the Egyptians just had like a top tier aesthetic. It's crazy how their history just has a top tier aesthetic that almost no one else even measures up to in terms of how cool they looked. I love the pharaoh and mummy themes and like the bandages, and his animations are so fucking cool. Where like with like parts of his body disappearing and like the bandage arms like coming out of portals and shit. It's so sick. Like the sarcophagus drop, turning into like the bottom half of his body turning into a pyramid to do like a dive bomb attack. It's so cool. The downside is he's like the worst character in the game, and you can tell. So first of all, Anakaris is not complete. He is not a complete character. What do I mean by that? I don't mean that in some kind of like hyperbolic way. I mean like literally he doesn't have things that other characters, like every other character, he doesn't have like universal system mechanics. He doesn't get access to them. Anakaris has no normal throw. He does not have like just the universal throw, but he is the only character without a universal like throw. He has a command grab because every character has at least one command grab, but like a normal throw, no. He can tech throws, so there's that, at least. But you have to rely on his command grab to do any kind of strike throw pressure. And his command grab is kind of slow. And has weird ranges that you have to like really understand. Number 2, he cannot push block. Remember when I said that Darkstalkers was a very experimental series for Capcom? This was the first game that did like a push block, right? Which is a staple in so many fast-paced fighting games, is while you're blocking, you do some kind of input and you get to push your opponent further away. Well, in Darkstalkers, they use this fucked up weird push block system where in every other game it's like you just press like 2 buttons or something like that, some command like that while you're blocking, and you'll do the push block. In Darkstalkers, you gotta like smack the buttons. You gotta like hit the buttons while you're blocking, and then like your attack buttons, and then the more buttons you press, the higher likely there's a random chance that you will get there's a percentage chance that you will get an actual successful push block depending on how many buttons you press. So if you're able to like, and it doesn't count if you press the buttons at the same time, so you actually do have to like piano them. So like the maximum chance to get it is if you just piano all 6 attack buttons, and you'll get like you'll have like a 70 or 80% chance to do it. And also it has this thing where the amount of pushback is variable depending on what was the button that actually triggered it. And lighter buttons push back less than the heavier ones. It's a very weird system. People laud it because, it's so interesting, because there's like the risk reward, and you have to make choices about like how much you want to push someone back. And okay, I get that. I just fucking hate dealing with that. Luckily, I don't have to playing Inocarus, because he doesn't have the ability to push block. He cannot do it. This is like an insanely offensive game. Pretty much every single character is like a rushdown character in one sense or another. There's ones who can like zone out, and they can zone with projectiles and stuff like that. But basically every single character can just like rush your ass down. And that makes push blocking like really important, because it's like one of your only ways to get someone off you without actually spending a resource for some characters. So Inocarus just doesn't have the ability to do that, which means that he has to hold pressure that other characters don't, and that can be like a problem. I was watching some match footage of him versus an Inocarus player versus a Bishamon. Bishamon is like the possessed samurai guy. And if Bishamon gets him in the corner, Inocarus just loses the game. Like he's just done. He's just donezo. He cannot deal with it. It's like, okay. He's also like really slow. He has weird mobility. He has very strange mobility. If you do a neutral jump, he doesn't actually jump. Just like his legs just disappear, and he starts going into this, like, he goes into this like float state, which might be like, there might be something I have no idea if there's any like tech with that. And then if you do like an angled jump, he does this very slow, like he's got moon physics, very slow jump forward. But his buttons are like gigantic, like just a huge mummy fist punching out of the ground, which is he's got such cool animations, and a lot of his moves are really fun to use. And when you start moving around using like his dive kicks and shit, he's genuinely really fun. And he's got like a lot of cool. He feels like such a well fleshed out character moveset wise. Like, he has this cool move where he like drops a sarcophagus from the sky. He's got like this move where his arms like combine together and make a big snake that bites. So there's like huge move. He's got he's got some weird moves where like he has a curse. I guess that's like a pretty iconic Inocarus move. It's an aerial projectile. He like spits out this weird curse ball towards the ground, and if it hits the opponent, they get turned into a little like baby chibi version. I think it's called like the paper doll form, and it's different for every character, and they're just kind of like helpless during it. They can just move around. Such a weird move. He can like absorb projectiles, and then once he absorbs the projectile with it, like this one special, he then just gets to use it. He just gets to use that projectile infinitely. I thought it was just single use, but no, it's like he just gets to use it the whole round. It's kind of crazy. It's cool. He has this bizarre move that he only can use when he's knocked down. Like I've never seen stuff like this in any other fighting game. He can only use it when he's been knocked down, and his body like separates in half, and this like pillar of like this portal opens below him with this like big energy pillar. And if the opponent like tries to jump at him and they touch the pillar, they get sucked down into like a void and then spat out, and it like does damage. So weird. Such a weird move. But he's neat. He is a really cool character, and actually moving around with his weird mobility. He's like the only character in the game who can he has this move where if you're up against the corner, you can backdash and you will teleport to the other side of the screen. You will come out the other side. It's super fun. It's really neat. So it's cool that I can actually appreciate Darkstalkers now a little bit. I just wish Inocarus felt a little better. I don't know. It's a little unfortunate to be looking through like the Mizumi wiki for this game, right? The competitive wiki with like guides and character breakdowns, and to just read like it's unfortunate, it's funny, it's a lot of things. Reading a character's like breakdown of all their moves, and half of them are like, do not use this, it sucks, it's completely competitively useless. You are more likely to lose if you use this attack. And like Raptor, like half of his, like all of his specials have some variation of that description, except for like his teleport. And you're like, okay, like all of his specials suck. He's the best character in the game. Okay, sure. All right. I guess it's the other side of that coin. Some people bemoan how in modern fighting games, every move and attack and every ability that a character has is very intentional, and it's meant for very specific purposes. And it's like almost people have lamented that a lot of modern fighting games feel overly designed. I think that's loosened up a little bit in recent years. It's also, I think, largely an indictment of Street Fighter V, which really feels like that. Like, this move is for this only. And don't you dare try to do anything else with it, Buster. This is like the opposite end of that, where moves are designed just like to exist, and they all suck. Like half of them suck. And I wish there was some middle ground, you know, where it wasn't super restrictive, but it didn't like completely suck, and it had some kind of a use, you know. It's one of my favorite things about a game that has a lot of balance passes, like plus R, where you can jump, like, I know Slayer the best, of course, in that game. But, like, I could talk about several different uses for basically every single one of his moves. Like, every single normal he has, every special. It's such a varied, diverse character. And that's one of the reasons that a game like that, two people will play the same character in completely different ways, because it's just flexible like that. Characters have moves that they're all good in some way for some purpose. Some of them will be more niche, you know. But there is an actual use for them that isn't like super locked down and confined. And so you have a little bit of freedom to focus on using different parts of a character's kit in a different way. And that's cool. And that's before you even get into like how they interact with system mechanics and all that. This was all about Darkstalkers, and I started talking about Guilty Gear again, as I'm wont to do. But yeah, Vampire Savior, fun game. I'm curious if there was going to be a new Darkstalkers, right? Would they want to make it play like this game, or would they do something completely new with it? Because I don't know how many people would be super attached to like some of the specific ways that VSAV plays, but they would. I don't know. I have no clue. I think as long as it has the characters and the style and all the Looney Tunes ass attitude to it, as long as it plays somewhat like the older games a little bit, probably be cool. I don't think people would mind. You know what I do mind? You know what I wouldn't mind is a hard ticket to Hawaii. Kat and I watched Hard Ticket to Hawaii. One of the best movies ever made. So we both know about this movie from Red Letter Media's Best of the Worst series. We both love RLM. I introduced her to them. And they have a show, they have a series on their channel called Best of the Worst, where they will watch weird, often bad, old movies, usually on VHS. And then do like a little roundtable discussion of them. We love Best of the Worst. It's a classic. I love every episode. And this is kind of an infamous film from that series. Hard Ticket to Hawaii is fucking crazy. It's crazy. It's from, what year is it from? It's 1987. It feels like a movie. It almost feels like, how do I describe it? You know those movies that have come out in recent years that are trying to spoof goofy like 80s movies and stuff like that, or anytime you see a parody of that kind of thing, of like a sort of exploitation-y kind of like 80s action movie, Hard Ticket to Hawaii just is that, but it's also trying to be a comedy. It's like a guy tried to write an action comedy, and it's so fucking weird and bad that like you can't tell what was serious and what was supposed. You can tell there's certain things that are definitely jokes. The jokes are so bad they wrap around to being funny, and the rest of the movie is so weird that I can't tell if it's supposed to be a joke or this is supposed to be the actual cool action. So Hard Ticket to Hawaii is about these two drug enforcement agency officers. No, only one of them is. The other one is in witness protection. They're these two hot 1980s blondes who look almost identical and often are wearing like the same outfit. They go to Hawaii because there's like a drug operation they killed two other like DEA agents, and they get mixed. Our two blondes get mixed up in the whole business. There is this weird factor. So they get roped into this crazy drug trade business where now people are trying to kill them to get these diamonds that they found, right? That was going to be payment for this drug shipment that these two blondes got. But now there's also a secondary element to the film, a secondary conflict looming in the background, if you will, slithering in the grass, you might say, which is that at the start of the movie, when they take the plane to Hawaii, they have to transport a snake, which is going to be displayed in a museum, like whatever their natural history museum is. And then the guy who runs the warehouse or whatever calls them, and he's like, guys, there's been a horrible mix-up. The snake that you took was not the snake for the museum. It was actually, that snake was going to be sent off to a laboratory to be completely destroyed because that snake was like an experimental test subject that was bitten by a horde of cancer-infested rats. And so there is an evil, cancerous, like poison aura snake just kind of wandering around Hawaii, just kind of killing people at random that you flash to every now and again. And it is literally, it's amazing. It's a little puppet. It looks like a Muppet because its mouth is always like, and just being around it like makes your skin melt. You can I think part of that was because they didn't have the budget to actually depict a puppet snake biting someone and doing anything like that. So they just kind of have it go like, and then the person just starts dying, which is awesome. There's like way too many characters in this movie, and all of them look the same. Everyone in this goddamn movie looks the same. There's like 4 or 5 blonde women, and I constantly get them mixed up. Yeah, I can't remember who's who. Like, I'm like, I think that's the main character. You just flash to like, we're in a restaurant now, and there's like a blonde lady having a date, and we have like a whole little dialogue scene with her. I realized later she wasn't actually a main character. I thought she was. No, it was just another woman, another blonde woman with 80s hair. All the guys look the same except for the dude with the ponytail who makes the racist Chinese accent. It just comes out of nowhere. It comes out of, hang on, I got the quotes up on IMDb. He's practicing karate with one of the other guys, one of the other main characters, and just out of nowhere he goes, "Oh, Confucius say a man with deadly hand must be very careful while slapping on aftershave." And you're like, what? You're like, what? It's really hard to start to describe this movie. The first 15 minutes are kind of boring, and then it hits this point where it just keeps going and going and going, and every scene is so fucking weird and funny and crazy. There's a scene where a guy tricks another dude into catching a frisbee that is coated in razor blades. There's a scene where 2 people are gonna have sex, and the lady who's like one of the main characters, because she has like a relationship with this guy, and she goes, I couldn't believe that. It's like one of my favorite lines. It caught me so off guard. She goes, I don't want you to control my life. And he goes, I don't want to control your life. Right now, all I want to do is suck the nail polish off your toes. And I fucking like punched Cat. I was like, I just like set a spasm. I was not expecting that line so hard. Sorry, babe. Like my fists just flew. It's like, what? There are scenes that I don't even want to spoil. I don't even want to spoil them. There's a scene with a fucking skateboard. Look, when the scene with this guy on the skateboard and he's like riding it upside down comes up, pay attention. It's an important scene in cinema history, okay? I was screeching. I can't recommend it enough. It has some of the weirdest... It's a really perfect, so bad it's good movie because it's the rare comedy, right? It is genuinely trying to be funny, but the jokes are so fucking weird and bad and poorly delivered that it's like, was this ironic? Like, I almost can't tell. It's like a Poe's Law thing. But yeah, the jokes are so bad that they're funny. And the things that are serious are also so weird and bad that they're funny. And it is still a competently made film. Like, there is an attempt at filmmaking going on. Right? It's not like complete slop. Garbage, like unwatchable. I would highly recommend it. You can find it for free on like some streaming services, or just go pirate it. No one cares. There's also a Blu-ray. of it, which I find funny. Yeah, Hard Ticket to Hawaii. Let's see. I had the quotes up. I think one of my favorite, just weird quotes from it was, hang on. Wait, where is it? It was right here. Oh my god, why can't? Oh yeah, I forget. I don't even remember what the context of it was. I think it's after these two characters had sex, and the guy goes, "One man's dream is another man's lunch." That's a good quote. Speaking of comedies, we also watched Freddy Got Fingered. Now, if you don't know, Freddy Got Fingered is the 2001 Tom Green, comedian Tom Green's one and only film. Was he in other? He might have been in other stuff, but this is like his movie. This was the era of. This was still in the era of let's give comedians movies, you know. And when this came out, it is widely considered. Tom Green, known for having like a very kind of edgy, kind of gross sense of humor and stuff, right? And when this movie came out, it was fucking obliterated. It's the only thing I knew about it. It was just torn to shreds. It is often considered one of the worst movies of all time, to a kind of legendary status, that it is one of the worst comedies ever made. And for some reason, Kat wanted to watch it. So we watched it together, and I think it's the funniest movie I've ever watched. I am not kidding. This is not hyperbole. I think Freddy Got Fingered might be the funniest movie, like comedy, like actual intentional comedy that I have ever seen in my life. It is every single fucking scene. Is amazing. Every single moment of this film is I'm in like a fucking wonderland of things that I find funny. But having said that, this might be one of the most love it or hate it movies that you will ever watch. Like, people, like, you know, there's like, people will say that about like, oh, artsy movies or something like that. This is not an artsy movie, not in a traditional sense of the word, you know, because with those films, you can go like, well, you know, whatever. I think it's pretentious or whatever like that. Freddy Got Fingered is so aggressively what it is that if you don't like it, it will be a miserable, disgusting experience. But if you like it, like me, wow. Again, I cannot stress enough how much I enjoyed this movie. So here's what Freddy Got Fingered is about. This is part of what I think I've been thinking about it in the last few days since we watched it. And I think this is part of what is so great about it. It's a very standard film. It is, Tom Green plays a character named Gordon. He lives at home he's like 38 years old. He's kind of a loser, kind of a burnout. He lives at home. He wants to be an animator, and his parents want him to get a job. His dad wants him to get a job. His dad, played by Rip Torn, who does an amazing job in this film. His dad wants him to get a job. His younger brother, who's like 25, is going off. He's got like an actual real job. And Gordon, you know, whatever they call him. Finally, when the movie opens, he gets a job at a cheese sandwich factory in California. Sure. But he's really going to California because he wants to pitch his ideas for a cartoon to the made up like early 2000s, late 90s style. This is a very like late, like turn of the century movie. Like everything, just the way all the sets are designed, like everything's fucking weird, like colorful and fun looking. Like it's a pre 9/11 movie. This is a pre 9/11 world. And it's like, okay, even just like describe, that's the basic synopsis. Even describing the plot of the film, like he goes there, he doesn't do well. He ends up coming back home because he loses his job at the cheese sandwich factory. And it's really just a story about him and his dad learning to accept each other and to make amends, and for his dad to see value in him. By all means, this is a very standard plot, especially for like a comedy vehicle movie, like something that's meant to showcase the main actor, the star of the show's comedy. Like, you know, Adam Sandler movies. Those have very, like, they're not doing anything crazy with their plots. It's got a very standard emotional arc, and that's just an excuse to, like, you know, frame jokes around, essentially, based on the concept. Freddy Got Fingered is like, what if you did a movie like that, but Tom Green is trying to ruin every single scene that he's in. Gordon as a character he might be the most bizarre main character I have ever seen. He has, I would call it evil autism, like evil style autism. He's in that mode. Every single scene, he is acting so fucking strangely. He is like screaming. He is saying words weirdly. He is making weird expressions at people. He's saying and doing completely psychotic things for seemingly no reason other than this is just the way that his mind works. He is straight up trying to ruin every scene. It is taking this very standard plot line and presenting it in the most off-putting way possible. And I think that's where the movie becomes so polarizing, is that people, if you don't want that, ooh, like it works on you. There's an interpretation I've seen of this film, which I think is honestly, I believe it, which is that, again, this is the era of let's give a comedian a movie. This was happening to a bunch of different people from like SNL and stuff like that. Adam Sandler got a bunch of movies. That was that era. And an interpretation of this film that I've heard of, is that Freddy Got Fingered was essentially Tom Green got offered to make a movie, and he said, what can I get away with? How hard can I prank the producers of this film and they'll just let me do, right? And in fact, there's moments of the movie. I'm sorry, there might be spoilers for Freddy Got Fingered in this podcast segment, but there's moments of the movie that almost seem to like reference this fact. Like, eventually he ends up selling his cartoon, right? And he gets a check for like $1 million, and he spends it on like a bunch of bullshit. And then he has like 700,000 left over, and he's like, and he's doing this. You don't know what the construction project is for yet, but the contractor, like the boss guy, is like, "Hey, this is gonna be really expensive," and he just hands him money, and he says, "I don't care. I don't care about the money. Easy come, easy go." You know, something like that. Like, he doesn't care, and it's almost like a wink to the audience that like, I'm just blowing money on this shit. Like, how much budget do I have left to spend on the movie? Well, can I get them to pay for a helicopter? Yes. Can I get them to pay for this huge set with all these extras in fucking, like, it's supposed to be Pakistan? Yes. You know, like, what can I get them to pay for? And it just kind of keeps going like that. Well, that's like near the end of the movie, but that's like that's sort of this thing that almost feels like it runs through the film. When I say off-putting, I mean, he goes to pitch his idea to the cartoon, like, animation studio executive. And the executive, he's made these, like, Gordon has made these, like, horrible, like, weird drawings of, like, an X-ray cat with X-ray eyes. And it's just like complete nonsense. And the guy is like, you gotta, like, get in the heads of the animals. You gotta be, like, inside the animals. And Gordon's like, get inside the animal. Okay, get inside the animal. And he's driving home back to, like, Oregon, I think is where it takes place, or, like, Washington. And he, like, on the way home, you know, like, this would not be a scene. They would not go in this direction. But, like, he comes across a dead deer. And I'm like, please don't fuck the deer. He doesn't fuck the deer. Actually, what he does is he opens the deer, because you got to get inside the animal. He opens the deer up. He slits it open with the knife. And, like, opens its insides up. And starts wearing its skin and, like, dancing around in the road until he gets hit by a car. And, like, it's, like, so brutally unpleasant. And it's great. It's, like, genuinely great. I fucking love the scene where he goes to visit his friend in the hospital. And, like, the setup of the scene makes no sense. Like, even before then, like, he walks in and, like, oh, this is the scene where he meets the girl that he ends up falling in love with. And she's, like, flipping little coffee creamer, like, what are they called? A little tub? You know, like those little coffee creamer thimbles, whatever they are. She's, like, flipping them over on her desk. She's, like, flipping one over and just trying to, like, get it to land on its, you know, right side up. And he asks her about it, and she goes, oh, it's my hobby. And he's like, the coffee creamer? And she's, no, not the coffee creamer. Physics. And he goes, your hobby is physics? It's already, like, a funny exchange. And then he goes, your hobby is physics? And she starts explaining, like, how she's, like, a fucking junior rocket scientist, like a hobbyist rocket scientist and all this. And she starts going, and I'm just going to do this. And it just cuts back to him, and he's looking down at her, and the expression he's making, he looks... It's not just bored. It's, like, bored and hateful. He looks like he fucking hates her for no reason. Like, this completely dead, angry stare in his eyes for, like, 1 second, and then they cut back to her and she's still explaining it. Like, it just shit like that makes me laugh so hard. He goes to visit his friend, and for some reason there's a pregnant woman in the hospital bed, like, right next to him. I don't know why she's not in the maternity ward, but whatever. And Gord's just starts making a mess. He, like, he starts screaming, and he's, because of course, and he bumps into, like, a big cabinet and knocks a bunch of shit over, and the stress sends her into labor. And Gord has to, like, he puts on the hospital jacket, like the hospital coat, like a doctor's coat, and he's like, I'm a doctor now, I'm a doctor, and he's gonna, like, deliver the baby for her. And there's, like, two, like, Indian women across from them, and they just take out their, like, ceremonial tambourines and start, like, chanting, and it's just, like, noise and yelling. And eventually he, like, delivers the baby and, like, fucking chews the umbilical cord to separate it. And he's like, oh no, the baby's asleep. I gotta save the baby's life. So he starts lassoing it around his head, and there's, like, blood just shooting everywhere from the fucking, like, birth. And then it wakes up, and he hands it to her, and she's like, you're a hero. And he gets, like, escorted out, and he's like, guess they got something against heroes in this place. And it's, like, the funniest thing I've ever seen. It's very Eric Andre. That's, like, the best way that I could describe it. You know, a lot of people will say, screaming doesn't equal funny. But there's an art to screaming and noise in a way that is funny, I think. I think that it's really easy to make it just nonsense dribble garbage, right? But this movie hits this, like, point where the chaos is so calculated and specific. Like, it isn't just random chaos happening. There's like there's Just the way everything, like, it builds up, and it's almost rhythmic in a way. The way that people will be screaming, and the way something will be, like, knocking over, and the way it'll be edited, especially. There's some great comedic editing in this movie. I fucking love the scene where the title of the movie comes from, which is when they go to family counseling, and just out of nowhere, so, like, Gord's dad, like, calls him an embarrassment to the family, and Gordon's, like, just on the spot accuses him of molesting his younger brother. He accuses his dad of being a child molester, which kicks off this whole weird subplot of the movie that never gets resolved. And he picks up, like, a bust of Sigmund Freud. Like, the therapist is like, "Oh, sir, we're gonna have to report you to the police." And Gordon is, like, so happy that he's fucked over his dad's life. He picks up a bust of Sigmund Freud, and he goes, "He's a molester. He's a child molester." And he just hurls, like, with all his strength, he just hurls it out of the window that they're next to. And it's just, like, he's just, like, screaming, and the glass shattering, and they cut back to the family, and they're like, and the dad's like, "Gore, what the hell are you doing?" And then, like, you cut back, and he's already, like, kneeling in the window pane, like, the frame, like, he's about to jump out. He's like a fucking Spider-Man pose, and then you cut back to them, and then you cut back, and he's just, it's like an exterior shot. He's jumping out of the window in slow motion for, like, 2 seconds. And just the way it's cut is so hilarious to me. Like, all of the implied motion between the cuts, the slowing down, just, it is, just the way everything builds up is so fucking funny. The fucking scene, we both love the scene so much, where his dad goes downstairs because he hears Gord using the shower that's in the basement. And he's trying to, like, fuck with him because he just hates his son. And he's trying to, like, make, he tries to turn the cold water on in the shower, and he doesn't hear a reaction. So he goes in, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing in here?" And he, like, opens the shower door, and Gordon is, like, in a full set of scuba gear, and he's like, "What are you doing in my scuba gear?" And Gordon holds up like some soap on a rope, and he goes, "I'm searching for buried treasure." Like, there is no reason for him to, he's just doing some shit. He goes, "I'm hunting for buried treasure." And his dad goes, "That, you idiot, that's not treasure, that's soap on a rope. Get the hell out of my shower." And he grabs it by the shoulder, and he fucking flings him through the glass door, through the shower door, and just fucking all the glass explodes. It's so violent for no reason. I think there's just something really funny about glass shattering. Maybe that's it. Maybe glass shattering just really gets to me. There's like a little detail in this one scene that it might be one of my favorite jokes, and I don't even know why. I think it's just because it's this tiny little detail, but it's like when he's at his low point and he's given up on his dream and he's working at a different cheese sandwich shop that's local, and he's like cleaning up. He's like cleaning up the shop in the evening, and he's like mopping down, he's wiping down the tables, but the tables, they have like the napkin dispenser and the condiments and all that, and he's just like knocking them off as he's wiping the tables down. And he just goes to the next one, he starts just knocking everything over, like just completely, just in this completely depressed state. It's so funny. It's such a the visual of that is just hilarious to me. It does feel like a movie that was trying to fail. Like, it was trying to make the most off-putting, least friendly comedy movie. Like, you're not going to let's have a good time and watch a movie with a couple raunchy jokes. it's just like people seriously, people in 2001 just might not have been ready for that kind of humor. But maybe nowadays, in like a post Eric Andre, post kind of weird surrealist internet humor world, I think it plays a lot better. It doesn't work as a traditional comedy because there almost has to be like a meta, almost like postmodern appreciation for it, and the way that it takes the normal structure of a film and executes it in a way that is like self-destructive. I went in, there's actually, speaking of Red Letter Media before, in the last segment, they did like a review of this movie. And I think one of the things Mike says is that like every scene starts out like a normal scene from a movie, and then Tom Green just like throws a grenade into it. He just throws a grenade in it. And that is what it feels like. Like it's a movie that's trying to rip itself apart as far as it can. And like everything about it is just weird and strange, and it has this weird like emotional heart to it that is, you have to get through that to kind of start for it to even begin having some kind of impact on you. Like the whole relationship with him and his dad, the weird romance where I don't even want to, you go watch the movie for yourself, but it is a really special film, and I can't think of anything else quite like it. If there is, excuse me, Jesus, if there is anything that even approaches the style of this movie, I would be all ears for it, because goddamn, to reiterate for like the 10th time, this is quite possibly the funniest movie I've ever watched. Every single thing about it is hilarious to me, and I love it. And I love how awful it wants to be. I really respect it. And with that, I think I'm going to draw this to a close. Thank you so much for... Why am I doing a voice? Thank you so much for listening this far, if you've been listening to me ramble. If you have a question, please leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question. Feel free to leave a... Fuck it, you know. Because I'm not... Phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I've been Taigen, plucking away as usual. Plugging away. Not plucking away. Plugging away. And have a good one, I guess. Bye. That I was not on my Audacity. I fucking made a space. I hit the space bar. I made a space on my notes. Bye.